So then it becomes a decision of, am I going to come to the table of influence, and am I going to eat from that? What am I going to do with that influence? Because all of a sudden, every one of us can lead. We have access to influence.
Mitch, one of the interesting things I hear you say frequently on your business podcast, The Whole Enchilada, has to do with leadership. And it sounds almost like you think all of us are capable of leadership. Do you?
Yeah, I do. I think all of us have the capacity to lead. And I think if we use the definition that I like, that John Maxwell coined. I think John has coined a definition of leadership that applies to everyone, and that is when he says leadership is influence. And when he speaks to influence, I think what that does is it reminds us, or it shares with us, that we all have the capacity, or we are influencing something or someone. So then if that's true, if leadership is influence, then the decision is, am I going to use that for good, or am I going to use that influence for bad? There's really no middle ground there, right? If I have influence, there's this sense of I'm going to use it for good, or if I'm passive or if I'm ignorant, then I may end up using it more for bad, because what I found is there's no real neutral ground when it comes to good and bad. It's kind of like if you sit back passive, things tend to be influenced in a negative direction, whereas good, you have to really work for it. You have to move toward it. But at the end of the day, yes, leadership is influence, and we all have the capacity to lead.
One of the phrases you use on the Whole Enchilada podcast that deserves a little of attention is you talk about pulling down the definition.
Yeah.
What do you mean by those words?
Well, pulling it down, and again, if we stick to John Maxwell's definition of leadership being influence, what we're seeing happen in that definition is he's pulling it down and flattening it out, opening it up so everyone has access to it. So then it becomes a decision of, am I going to come to the table of influence, and am I going to eat from that? What am I going to do with that influence? Because all of a sudden, every one of us can lead. We have access to influence. And so the fact is we pull it down and we widen it up, rather than leadership being that stereotype that says it's out there,
the elite,
or up there for someone else.
The powerful.
Yeah. I think for so long, and even today, we can sometimes define leadership as a role. It's a title, it's a vocation. And so what we can do in those moments, either by convenience or by consequence, is we can somehow not take responsibility. It's someone else's responsibility to be the leader. And what John's definition of leadership being influence does is it puts that responsibility in my lap, and now I get to do something with it, whether it's good or whether it's bad.
It's true. You're reminding me of one specific podcast you did with a business consultant named Jack Burgess. Do you remember the story he told of the IT director who had, I think he said she had the most influence, he thought, of any leader in the organization. And he used this great phrase, she leads from the middle.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the influence you're talking about.
Yeah, I think there's a level of when we recognize we carry influence, then we don't necessarily need to have a title or a position. We can muster the courage, right, to leverage that influence in a way that moves people and moves things in a direction for a greater good.
Yeah. How do you think this affects the wholesaler or the advisor?
Yeah.
What does this have to do with the financial industry?
Yeah. Well, if it's true that leadership is influence, and again, that's not a new thing. We're not sharing a new concept here.
Right.
I think what I have found or experienced in my years of being the CEO of Executive Scheduling Associates, 15 years in this space, the most effective financial professionals, whether they're a financial wholesaler or a financial advisor or someone else in that space, they actually take responsibility for the influence that they carry, and they use it for good. So there's this sense that they understand their influence, they accept responsibility for it, and then they use it for good. And in my opinion, those who do that are the most effective in their profession.
I'm remembering another conversation that you have had that I witnessed with, I think, a wholesaler named Karen, who told the story of having a client leave. I don't recall, maybe you do, whether their business went elsewhere or closed.
They had moved to a different broker-dealer and moved their product to a whole nother agent.
All right,
firm.
so this is somebody she served, and now he's gone. And then the phone rings one day, and he needs advice. Actually, he does not need her services or her products. He needs advice. And because of the relationship, she gave her advice getting nothing in return. Is that what you mean by use your influence for good?
Well, I think that's an ultimate example of using your influence for good, when there's that sense of, I may not get anything back in the short term from this, but the goodness, the integrity of Karen was, I'm going to do good here, believing that doing good now will pay off at some point in the future. You know, my financial advisor, Bart, he does the same thing. You know, he carries his influence in a way where he makes me feel a lot bigger than I know I am in his accounts.
Oh, we've all heard that feeling.
I'm pretty sure I'm one of his smaller accounts. You know, but what Bart does all of the time is, if the market is up and down, which we know these past several years, it's been all over the place. You know, I won't be expecting it. You know, I might be at Jersey Mike's having my number 8, combo, eating my lunch, and I get this call, and it's my financial advisor, and he'll call me and say, hey, I just wanted to check in with you. I wanted to let you know everything's good. I got my eyes on your account, and I want to reassure you. Do you have any questions? And whether I had questions or not in that moment, him coming in with some influence to say, hey, I've got your back. I'm here for you. Let's stay the course. It really allows me to stay the course to my plan rather than react in the absence of that influence without him giving me that call.
So what's the point we're making here?
The point is simple. We've already said it a few different ways, but in my opinion, the most effective financial professionals, so in this case, financial wholesalers, financial advisors, the people that we're serving, we're trying to encourage and inspire, accept responsibility for their influence, and they use it for good.